This is the Straight Truth Podcast, biblical answers to difficult questions from a Christian worldview. Well, Pastor, in 1 Corinthians 12, Paul says, "To each is given the manifestation of the Spirit for the common good." And this question gets at the spiritual gifts. And I know you've had a host of questions about this and people that have commented to you about, they might come up and say things like, well, my spiritual gift is blank. My spiritual gift is teaching, and so therefore I'm looking for a place to teach in the church, or would it be okay if I preach from time to time? We don't get that a whole lot, but still, that may have come up. What do you say to somebody who comes up to you and asks you about spiritual gifts and say, they might even say, I don't have one. I have no talent. I have no, I don't really have a spiritual gift. I don't know what to do. So what would you say? Because Paul says that each has a manifestation of the Spirit.
Yeah, and you answered part of the question right there in what you just said in the verse that you read. So each one of us in the New Testament, each believer, is assumed to have a spiritual gift. So there's not a single one of us who has not been gifted by the Spirit of God. By the way, these are spiritual gifts, which is to say, and they're manifestations of the Spirit, which is to say, this is something we received by virtue of salvation. This is what we received through regeneration, new life in Jesus Christ. A spiritual gift may, and often does, I would even say most often does, coincide in some way with some sort of natural gift that God has put in us, just by virtue of creation, our personalities, whatever. It may coincide with those strengths, but still distinct from them. This is something received through salvation in Jesus Christ, imparted by the Spirit of God. In fact, in 1 Corinthians, that language is used, that the Spirit of God has assigned these gifts. Mm-hmm. So we didn't choose our gift. We don't get to sign up for which one we want. This is something that God has put in us. And comparing that with 1 Peter 4, what I believe is that our spiritual gift, singular, is variated. There's variation in it. So you have the gift categories of the New Testament: teaching, serving, various things are mentioned. You have, in my view, you have temporary sign gifts that are spoken of in the New Testament, and you have permanent edifying gifts that are spoken of in the New Testament. Those are like categories of giftedness. Mm-hmm. It's been compared, I think John MacArthur spoke of it this way, been compared to like a painter's palette. And so you have various colors on the painter's palette, and then the Spirit of God has imparted to each one of us an enablement for ministry. When we walk by the Spirit, or empowered by the Spirit, this is when this gift shines, is empowered, enabled to function as it was meant to function. That gift, singular, is made up of various aspects of these colors. So that each one of us is uniquely gifted. It's like a spiritual snowflake, no two exactly the same, which also makes identification very difficult. Someone says, I'm a teacher. Well, okay, listen to R.C. Sproul teach, listen to Alistair Begg preach, listen to John MacArthur teach, John Piper preach. They're all teachers. But they're not the same.
Not at all.
There's a lot of difference there. And so it is with us. So 1 Peter 4 says this: as each has received a gift, singular, use it to serve one another. So these gifts are not given for self-edification or self-exaltation.
That's a good point.
Yeah, they're given for the service of other people. As good stewards, so there's a stewardship imparted with that giftedness. This is why it's important for every believer to know that you have a gift, because you're meant to use it. You have now been given a stewardship with this giftedness. What are you going to use your gift to do? As good stewards, he says, and then he adds this, of God's varied, and that Greek word has to do with multicolored, grace. So the illustration is actually a very good one. Yeah. Multiple colors mixed together in a singular gift that then we use not for self-edification or self-exaltation, but for the edification of other people. Now, what's interesting, Josh, is nowhere in the New Testament do I find a single exhortation to discover what your gift is.
Good point.
Yeah, not one. Rather, you're just to know you have one, and now you use it. And if you ask, well, then how do I use it if I don't know what it is? The answer is, as you mature in the Christian faith, and you're faithful to serve in whatever capacity you have a desire for and you're granted the opportunity for in the Lord's church, what God has made you to do becomes evident. It begins to come out. It comes out in your desires. It comes out in your usefulness. So it is affirmed not just by you, but the people you're supposed to be edifying. So we've met people who say, I'm gifted to teach. Their class comes along behind them and says, no, they're not. Okay? So obviously, whatever gift you think you have, it's not edifying people in the way you imagine. So you have to reevaluate it. You may say you're a teacher, but if no one's edified by it, obviously that's not your gift. So are you content? Do you recognize the great privilege it is to serve God in any way? So are you content to serve in the way that best serves other people? And if your service that you find to be most edifying in the life of the church is just opening the door for people on Sunday mornings and greeting people, or helping serve a lunch to seniors, or whatever the case may be, are you content to just be used in the way that most glorifies God and edifies others? If that's your attitude, your gift will eventually emerge. What God has made you to do eventually emerges. And if you can take yourself out of it, again, this is not something you choose, it's been assigned. So you don't get to sign up for what you want to be. If you'll just take yourself out of it and say, Lord, all I want to do is glorify you and serve other people. And if I'm a doorman in your house, that's enough for me. Then what emerges over time is what God made you to do.
So you don't take a personality test and discover your gift that way. Obviously, we rule that part out. That seems to still be prevalent in evangelical culture. And but at the same time, does personality have anything to do with this?
Well, it's not surprising. No, it has nothing to do with your spiritual gift. But it would not be surprising, would it, that the same God, the same Creator, who assigned your giftedness, also formed you in your mother's womb.
Right.
It would not be surprising if your gift in some way sort of merges with who you were already made to be from a natural point of view. It's not always true.
Yeah.
So you and I joke about this a lot with each other. We're both called to be pastors.
Right.
You are more naturally an extrovert. I am more naturally an introvert. So you get in a group full of people you don't know, and you're energized. I get in a group of people I don't know, and I am drained by the end of the evening. Yet we're both called and gifted to be pastors. So it doesn't always hold true that your gift fits with what you would imagine from a personality point of view. However, I'll say this. I'm called to study Scripture regularly, to teach it, which calls for a lot of contemplation, quietness.
That works.
Right? So it does sort of work with my personality too, in a different kind of way. So, and this is where, and I think it's also instructive talking about this practically, we understand that your gift doesn't preclude you from service, practically speaking, on any given occasion that might not match your gift. So I say, well, I'm called to be a teacher, so I can't help serve dinner at the senior luncheon. Of course, that doesn't mean that. And in the same sort of way, so we have to grow spiritually, even in a way that takes us beyond our giftedness. Studying Scripture and teaching it matches my introverted sort of naturally way I'm wired, but I'm also called to shepherd people, which means you have to spend time with people. You have to love people. You have to be around people. So I can't use my natural introverted personality to excuse me from spending time with people. I have to grow. This is where the gifts actually also serve in the life of a congregation. We help each other grow. Your extrovertedness can help my introvertedness. My personality can help someone else's. So we're called to help each other be better, grow into Christ in all respects. And so giftedness is just one part of this.
And it reminds me of Paul's analogy with the body and each being members and all, but one man and all growing together, right? And God's very grace.
We can't all be the same thing and the church be what God means for it to be. He means for us to be different on purpose, and yet not isolated from each other, and actually contributing to each other's spiritual growth.
Thanks again for joining us for this episode of the Straight Truth Podcast. Now, Straight Truth is listener supported. So if you'd like to find out ways how you can help us to continue to produce this podcast, you can go to our website and find out ways to do that, straighttruth.net. At that website, you'll also find links to all of our previous episodes and our social media channels, so be sure to check it out. Straight Truth is a production of Walking in Grace Ministries, the preaching and teaching ministry of Pastor Richard Caldwell. For more information, go to walkingingrace.org.